All right. Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. Uh, Holidays are coming soon. We are here in Canada, at least. We are on a 4-day countdown. We're off on Thursday. I imagine most classrooms in the U.S. Will be winding down pretty shortly as well. So we're thrilled to have you before we hit the holidays. We've got about 3 or 4 events this week to wrap things up. You definitely don't want to miss them. And Friday, we're going out in style with a live event from South Africa with the South African penguins at a rescue center there. I think they've got something like 300 or 400 chicks they've been rearing, and they'll be releasing back into the wild soon, which is pretty cool. So this month, our theme has been big cats. We generally, in December, feature researchers and scientists, conservationists and filmmakers from across the Americas, Asia and Africa, even Indonesia sometimes, who are sharing their research, their work, the efforts that they're making to protect our amazing big cat species. And I'm really excited today to be heading virtually to Botswana, where we have Andrew Stein joining us. He has over 15 years experience working on human-carnivore conflict throughout East and Southern Africa. His work draws upon his interest in wildlife ecology, culture, and engaging with communities to develop good, lasting solutions to challenging issues in the field. So in 2015, he founded CLAWS Conservancy, stands for Communities Living Among Wildlife Sustainably. It's a nonprofit organization established to provide innovative approaches to promote human-wildlife coexistence. So I'm going to bring Andrew in with us live right now. Hey, Andrew, how are we doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you, Joe?
I'm good. It is great to see you. I love your background, nice and green. Mine is nice and white, but it's really good to see you.
Yeah, no, it's great to be here. It's great to be in Botswana this time of year. I'm sitting on the edge of the Okavango River, which is right behind me, in a village called Saronga.
Awesome. Well, Andrew, we have a great group of classrooms. Some of them are on camera, some of them are tuning in live via YouTube. So they're excited to learn a little bit more about what you get up to in the field, and then we'll let them take over with questions after that.
All right, sounds great.
All right.
So why don't I share my screen? I have some slides to present. I'll talk a little bit about my background, how I got to become a big cat biologist, and then talk a little bit about the work that I do. And then I'm excited to hear some of your questions and comments. So let me share my screen here for a moment. Hopefully you can see it.
All right, looks good.
All right, so the title of this presentation is Predator Conservation, My Personal Safari to Africa. As Joe mentioned, my name is Andrew Stein. I have a PhD in wildlife conservation, and I'm the director of the CLAWS Conservancy. When I grew up in Massachusetts, in the northeast of the United States, I had no idea that I would ever be able to come to Africa even once in my life, never mind dedicate most of my adult life to studying large predators in Africa. As you can see from the picture at the top, there I am in the front row with the big ears and big smile. And there I am at the bottom, tracking lions standing on top of a beaten up Land Rover in the middle of the African bush. So how did I get from a classroom in this class picture, probably similar to a lot of the class pictures you take every year, and end up in the African bush? So where I am right now is in Botswana, a country in southern Africa about the size of Texas. You can see it at the bottom of the continent with the red square around it, just north of South Africa. And Botswana looks a lot like this. This was taken in one of my previous research camps where we actually had elephants coming through camp quite frequently. This elephant in particular was pretty relaxed with our research team, so we could walk around, do our business while he was visiting. And we knew him because he had a broken tusk and a notch on his ear that made him very distinctive to identify. And this is where I lived for 3 years in a big tent on a wooden platform. And this was home in the middle of the bush. And this is what our kitchen looked like. So you can see the tea kettles on the On the stovetop, it was powered by propane. We had a little spice rack there. All of our dishes and pots and pans were in the cupboards up top, but this is where we used to eat. And as you can see, the roof is made of canvas, but it's all open. There are no windows, so animals, birds, insects can fly in and out of the kitchen at all times. This is what our shower looked like. So you can see open air shower. You can see all the soap and cleaning products on the right, and then a little sink. And sometimes at night, at the end of the day, we'd go and take a shower, walk down the path with our towel. And as we got to the shower, we'd turn the corner, and then an animal would be there licking up all the water at the base of the shower. Things like hyenas or even lions would sometimes come and visit. This is what our bathroom looked like. And it's very, very primitive, actually, not a flushing toilet. And you can see in the front of that toilet seat that something took a chunk out. And we think it was probably a hyena that came to visit. This is that same elephant from the previous picture. And he would come into camp quite frequently and try to get the seed pods from the tree in the middle of camp. We had our little fireplace and chairs, but when the elephants would come in, we tried to give them space so that they could do what they wanted to do and we weren't disturbing them. We were trying to blend in with the environment, so when animals came, we gave them the right of way. But also in camp, we had a bird bath, and during the day, we would have lots of different species of birds come and visit, and then at night, many of the predators would come. So oftentimes we knew they had come through because we saw their tracks in the morning in the sand. And one time we saw all of these leopard tracks in the dry season. So we decided to put up a motion sensor camera to see which leopard it is. And it turns out there were 3 different female leopards coming in to drink at our bird bath over the course of several days. And it's because there wasn't a lot of water outside of the camp. So we would always fill the bird bath full of water in the late afternoon. Once the birds were done and we went to sleep, that's when the leopards took over. We'd also have lots of snakes in camp. This was a rock python that I found in the road. I'm trying to shift him out of the road so that we could pass. But we would also get poisonous snakes, things like puff adders, spitting cobras, boom slangs, and so forth, that we would have to capture and bring out of camp so that the snakes were safe and that we were safe as well. But also we had to put our food away and make sure everything was secure because baboons and vervet monkeys would like to come into camp and take whatever food scraps were around. This vervet monkey actually took some sticks of gum out of one of the tents and would chew the gum and then spit it out, and it would get stuck in his fur. And then you would see him trying to pull gum out of his fur. And if any of you have had gum stuck in your hair, you know it can be a real challenge to get it out. But also in northern Botswana where we work, this is the biggest stronghold for the African elephant. And in northern Botswana alone, there's about 120,000 elephants. About 40% of Africa's elephant population exists here in northern Botswana, primarily around the Okavango Delta, where I'm currently sitting. But also there are other wetland animals like hippos and crocodiles. Some of the crocodiles can get really, really long, well over 10 feet long. We also have Cape buffalo, lots of zebra, warthogs, antelope like impala, kudu, and then other primates like baboons. We also have other visitors to camp. About 10 years ago in my previous research, we had Prince William and Prince Harry come to visit, and you can see them in the back row of the picture. I'm on the far right. So it's quite interesting. You never know who will come and visit, animals or people. But in our area, one of the challenges that we face most is not entirely the wildlife, but actually grazing livestock, cattle that are owned by villagers that are walking throughout the landscape unattended. And they'll walk way into the waters of the Okavango and graze on the water, on the grasses in the water of the river system. But then we have problems when lions will go and kill some of these cattle to eat. And then the villagers get really upset, and then they go after the lions, and sometimes even kill them. So what can be done? People like a story, and lions are individuals. So I started a program that I call Pride in Our Prides, and it engages members of the community to learn about and care about the lion populations that live in and around the villages where I'm staying right now. We have our research team that helps us with tracking the lions in the area. So the first thing we have to do when studying the lions is to dart them and put tracking collars on them. Excuse me. So putting these tracking collars on can be a real challenge because lions, unlike other wild cats, are social. So when you dart one lion and it's asleep, like this one that we're measuring, the other lions are wide awake and walking around. And so we have to be really, really cautious that the lions that are awake don't become too curious about what we're doing. So we always have people on guard and with spotlights watching so that if the lions get too close, we can quickly jump into a vehicle for safety. Here I'm looking to make sure that the collar that we put on this big male is secure so that we can follow his movements and see where he's going. We put a cloth over his eyes because when we dart him, the drugs that we use, he actually doesn't close his eyes while he's sleeping from the anesthesia. So we cover the eyes with a cloth so that dust and other things don't get in his eyes and cause problems. But when the lions are sleeping, we do a full assessment of their health. And that includes looking at their teeth. Now this lioness, you can see the teeth are really, really sharp and they look in very good condition. The teeth on the cheeks where our molars are located are called carnasals, and when the lion tries to bite off chunks of meat, he uses the teeth on the side of his mouth to cut, just like using a pair of scissors. And then, of course, the canines, which are very, very long and prominent, those he uses to bite and to restrict the breathing of the neck when they're trying to make a kill. Also, looking at the teeth, we can tell the age of an animal. And this one is still in their prime, but still quite young. You can see the tips of the teeth still have white on them, and they're very sharp. And that tells us that this animal is probably 4 or 5 years old. And many of the lions, depending on where they are in the wild, can live, the males usually live 8 to 10 years old. And then the females can live up to 11, or in one of my projects, we saw a female that lived over 16 years. So depending on where they are, where they're getting into conflict, we can see animals that get a bit older. We also check the claws, and cats have retractable claws. So the claws are housed in a sheath in their paws. So when they walk, you don't see the claws very prominently, even with a house cat. But then when you push at the tip of the toe, then the claws come out. And that's what they use to grab their prey to secure them when they're trying to make a kill. Once the collar is on, then we'll go tracking the lion, and we use radio telemetry equipment to listen out for the signals for the collar. The louder the signal, the closer we are. But sometimes while we're tracking, we can get into difficult situations. This was a vehicle that we were using to cross the river to try to catch up with African wild dogs at the time. And we slipped into the river and then the engine cut off. So, of course, this can be a really big problem. You can't call AAA to come and rescue you. So you have to think in a way to use innovation to try to get the vehicle out. And we were able to use this cable on the front called a winch, and we wrapped it around the spare tire at the front of the picture, and we buried the spare tire, and we were able to pull the vehicle out. And then we were able to make a few modifications to the fuel pump. Then the vehicle started again, and then we were able to continue on our journey. Once we find the animals, I'll radio to the team. We'll take notes about the location of the lions, what habitat they're in, who's present, whether there are cubs there or not, maybe if they're feeding, what they're feeding on. And then we just watch for a while and see exactly what's happening, whether there's some interesting behavior that we can document. In this picture, you can see the female in the back with the collar, and then you can see a variety of cubs of lots of different age groups. And so they don't have cubs at one time of the year. They can have cubs at different times of the year. So different females within the pride will have cubs of different ages. So here you can see the one looking at us is much smaller than the one to the right or even in the front of the picture. And one of the things that's unique about lions that's really interesting is that part of their social behavior is that different females, if they're lactating, if they're producing milk, then they will suckle the cubs of other females in the group. Now within the pride, all the females are related. They may be sisters, it may be a mother and a daughter, it could be a grandmother and a granddaughter. So all of them are related. So it's in their best interest to take care of each other's cubs to make sure that they all survive, just like any family would do. Now, another component of our program is an alert system. So when the lions, you can see these icons of the lions that have collars beam their information of where they're located up to satellites. And then those satellites show us whether they get close to a village. And all the villages are in the red circles, or in a cattle post where people are living with their cattle. And those are the smaller circles. So you can see this one lion is in the middle of several circles. So he's in danger of not only killing cattle, but maybe the villagers might get upset and go after him. And you can see the other icons are cattle that have trackers on them as well. So if the lion gets close to the cattle, then we know, and we can warn the villagers to let them know the lions are nearby so that they can go out and make sure that their cattle are safe before the lions take action. So when an alert goes out, it goes to people's cell phones. What's interesting, in the villages where we live and work, many of the people live in houses made of mud and sticks and long grass for the roof. But many of them have cell phones. So on their cell phones, they'll get a message with the name of the lion, which village they're approaching, and then how far away they are. So on the right, you can see Mayenga is close to one of the cows, cow number 1, at a distance of 4 kilometers. Ditonga is near cow number 1 at 6 kilometers. Wetu is near Gonatsoka village, 4.17 kilometers. So you can see what the messages look like on the phone. The other thing that we do, aside from using technology, is we started a herding program. Now, many of the cattle that are out in our area are walking around without any protection. And so when the lions see them, then they can quickly go and feed on them. But what we've done is we've created a program where we hire local villagers. We give them training in rotational grazing. So they move the cattle around the landscape so that they don't overgraze. And then we give them protection against predators. And then we give them basic health care. So when the cattle get sick or they get injured or they get an infection, our herders can give them treatment. They give them vaccinations and other things to make sure that the cattle are really fit and healthy. And through this, the cattle are certified as wildlife friendly. So through this program, we're resurrecting traditional herders that used to be part of the system for hundreds of years. And recently, many of the people in the villages have stopped herding because the herd boys that used to do the job are now in school. So now we're hiring adult men to do that job. And through a series of trainings, we give people the tools of how to herd their cattle best. Through this program, the villagers receive a certification saying that they are trained herders, and then they can actually either work for our program or they can start herding their own cattle. Within our program, the herders spend a lot of time with the cattle, become very familiar with them, and treat them like family. Lastly, we've been doing an education program with children from the local village. So we asked them to come up with stories for different wild animals. So they did drawings, and then they wrote their own stories about lions and elephants and snakes and birds to tell us about how they feel about the wildlife that live in their environment. So through this program, over the last 7 years, the lions have started to recover. And at this point, the lion population is about 45 lions in our area in 7 or 8 different groups that we know of. One of the prides has 15 lions in it with 9 cubs. So we're really excited to see these cubs grow and contribute to the population into the future. So I want to thank some of our sponsors and contributors: National Geographic, Lion Recovery Fund, WWF, Tusk Trust, Sacramento Zoo, Natural Selection Herding for Health, and Great Plains Foundation. If you're interested, you can find us on the internet, clawsconservancy.org. You can follow us on Facebook. We have an Instagram page where we post photos of the program and share news updates as well. So thank you for your time. I'm going to close this presentation so I can start to take some questions.
Awesome, Andrew. Thanks so much for a great presentation and really highlighting all the awesome work that you're doing, and really highlighting that it's not just, one thing. It's a bunch of activities working together with the community that really gets things done.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, what we find is that lions do really well if they have space and natural prey.
Yeah.
And when they get into trouble, where they get into trouble is where they start eating cattle, and people are dependent on their cattle for their livelihoods. So when they lose cattle, they get really, really upset, and then they feel they have to take action. So if we can engage communities, help them protect their cattle, then lions will be safe as well.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's time we switch gears. We get into a little Q&A action. So if you're tuning in via YouTube, use that chat sidebar and send us in some questions. We're going to bring some camera classrooms in as well. And I also made a Kahoot quiz in the background. So what I'm going to do today, just to make sure we get lots of questions in, I'm going to send the link to the Kahoot quiz to all the teachers. And if you want to do it later in the day or after the event today, you guys can compete in that quiz together and see who comes out on top in your classroom. So let's go into a little Q&A action. Let's see. We are going to go to, let's start in Maine. We've got Miss McGinnis's crew hanging out with us, some grade 4s. It might even be a double crew today. Let's see. How are we doing, grade 4s?
Can everybody say hi?
Hi. Hi, my name is Ellie. Has lions ever tried or hurt you?
Hi, Ellie. Thanks for the question. Actually, lions are really afraid of people. They're really, really big. They're very powerful. They're very strong. They can be very, very dangerous as well. I mean, a male lion can be over 500 pounds. But when they see people, they run away. And that's because many of the lions have had bad experiences with people. And so in my experience, I've never been attacked by a lion. Most people in these villages walk around and they're not attacked. So actually, I've been very fortunate where I have never been attacked or hurt.
All right. Good question to get us started. We got another one there on deck. I think I see a hand there back there.
Say your name.
Hi, I'm Ashton. How many pounds of food does a lion eat a day?
Oh, Ashton, good question. I haven't counted, but I would probably say like 5 or 6 pounds a day, something like that. They don't eat every day. Obviously, it's really hard work making a kill. So oftentimes they're not successful. I think 1 out of every 3 hunts, they're successful. So you can imagine the lions go for something like a giraffe or a zebra or something like that. They're able to pull them down. Then the whole pride is feeding. And then it becomes really competitive for the individuals to come in and try to eat as much as they can. So they'll make usually like 1 or 2 kills a week in order to support the whole pride.
All right. We'll come back to our main crew shortly and follow up, but let's go to, where should we go? Let's go to Minnesota. We got some 4th graders hanging out with Miss Oaks. Let's bring them in front and center. Hey, Minnesota. Hey, Minnesota.
Hello.
What is the most dangerous animal you've ever captured?
The most dangerous animal I've ever captured. Let's see. I guess that's a matter of perspective. I've caught poisonous snakes like puff adders and spitting cobras. I've captured leopards that were very, very angry about being captured. So before they were darted and sleeping and we could actually work with them, they were extremely, extremely dangerous. Yeah, I would say those are probably the top 2.
All right, let's grab another one. Good question, bud.
What made you interested in wildlife people conflict?
Great question. Thanks. What got me interested in wildlife people conflict? I think it's a combination of different things. First, when I was your age, I was really fascinated by wild animals. I mean, all the different shapes and colors and sizes and behaviors and vocalizations and where they lived. And I found it endlessly fascinating. So I would read books and watch documentaries and all these things to learn more about them. But then when I started to travel and I came to Africa, and you start meeting different people and you see where they live and you see how they get by and you learn about all their different ceremonies and rituals and the songs they sing and the interests they have. Then you start to become interested in the people. And when you realize that sometimes the wildlife and the people don't get along, they don't mix very well. And so I started to think, well, if we're going to conserve wildlife that's disappearing all over the world, we're going to have to work with people in order to do it. The people that live on the ground with the wild animals are going to be the ones that to decide whether these animals live or not. So the best way to do that is to focus on that conflict, to try to bring about coexistence, to try to bring forward ideas, oftentimes ideas that the people in the villages themselves have, and then trying to bring resources to make sure that the people and the wildlife have what they need to survive. And so it became sort of an interest of finding ways that coexistence can happen, to conserve the wildlife and help them thrive, but also help people prosper in really challenging environments.
All right. Great questions from Minnesota. Let's take a little trip here. Let's go to New York. Some fifth graders hanging out with Miss Cottrell. Let's bring them front and center. Hey, fifth graders.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi.
Has anyone been attacked by a lion in your crew?
Nobody in my team has ever been attacked by a lion. And in fact, one of the things that people often ask us is whether we carry guns or other things to protect ourselves. And honestly, we don't. We try to be as respectful as possible of the lions, respectful of their space, make sure that even when we're darting, where it can be a big challenge, and we have to get very close to them, we try to do it in a way where we keep our team safe and we keep the lions safe. So nobody's been attacked.
All right. I know it's definitely a lot of questions, right? Lions look big, scary, teeth and claws. But, I dive a lot and often with sharks, and it's the same kind of thing. The shark kind of takes a look at you and is like, I don't know what that is. I'm out of here. And I think that's similar with the lions too. It's not something they're used to seeing all the time out on their area. It's not something they're used to smelling or hunting or following. Go ahead, fifth graders. You got another one there for us?
Yeah, we have another one coming up, Joe.
All right.
How many teeth do the female and male lions have?
How many teeth do they have? You stumped me. I'm not sure. I'd have to look that up. If I were to guess, I'd say about 28 or so. Like maybe 14 on the top, 14 on the bottom, but I'd have to look that up actually. Yeah, you stumped me.
So I only know this because we had someone talking about lions last week. And that same question came up. How many teeth do lions have? And the answer that we found when we tracked it down on YouTube on Google was 30. Whether that's accurate or not, I'm trusting Google. And similar to us, right? We have 28 to 32, depending on if our wisdom teeth were removed. So Google says 30, and I only know that because we were looking for that answer last week. We had the same question come up.
All right, so I wasn't too bad.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay, where are we going now?
Our lions get the wisdom teeth out. Maybe that's the difference.
Yeah, fair enough. Some of those procedures you have to do sometimes. Mrs. Gully's crew, seventh graders in Virginia. How are we doing today?
We're doing good, Joe.
Good, good.
Does your research have any negative impacts on the environment?
Ooh, good question. We hope not. We try to minimize any negative impacts that we have on the environment as best we can. I'm trying to think of some of the ways where we may have an impact. One of the things that people often ask about is the collars itself, like putting the collars on. Does that have an impact on lion behavior? The collars that we use are about 3 or 4 pounds. So they're pretty heavy, like for us, but the lions that are carrying them can carry much bigger weight. Usually we try to make sure that it's like 2% of the body weight or less. And when we follow the animals, we see no real behavioral difference between the lion that has the collar and the lion that doesn't. In our field camps, we use very little electricity. We have solar panels here for our electricity. So we have less of an impact. We're not burning a lot of fossil fuel to we don't have heaters for our tents. We have a couple fans that help, especially this time of year. It's like 90 degrees every day. But otherwise, we live pretty simply, and our footprint here is pretty small compared to my footprint back home when I go back to the US, and I'm using the air conditioner all summer and I'm using the heater all winter. Yeah. So it's pretty low.
All right, 7th graders, you got another one there for us?
We have one more, just
Perfect.
Cubs.
Which
Yeah.
one's that?
The Cubs?
This one? Or-
Yeah. No, go ahead and answer that one.
Okay. How many cubs do they have at once?
Great question. Lions can have between 1 and 4 cubs at a time. Usually the litters are either 2 or 3 cubs. So a litter of 4 cubs is a big deal. And so oftentimes within those litters, not all of the cubs are able to survive, unfortunately. I mean, that's the way of nature. In most areas, about 50% of the cubs that are born survive. So if a lioness has 4 cubs, usually 2 will make it. If a lioness has 2 cubs, maybe 1 will make it. So in our area, we have, unfortunately, we have higher losses because we're in a conflict zone, and a few more of those cubs don't make it. So we're hoping that with the work that we're doing and the partnerships with the villages, that we can increase cub survivorship for our area.
All right. A couple quick questions here from YouTube. The first one about the lion's manes. Do they serve any purpose?
Ooh, I love this question. When I would teach biology, I would talk about the lion's mane. And you think about it, especially in such a hot climate like where we're at now, that mane, it's like a thick, heavy blanket that they're wearing over their head and their neck. And so it brings the temperature of their head way, way up. And so one of the things that people comment about with lions is that they sleep 20 hours a day and that they're lazy. And especially the male lions, everybody says how lazy they are. But if you have a hot, hot blanket on all day, it makes it really hard for you to be able to get the energy to go and hunt and so forth. The other thing about the mane that can be detrimental is that they can be seen really easily by their prey. So if they're moving through their environment, they have this big dark mane that's sticking out. And if they're in the tall grass, then a zebra can see them from far away, or a giraffe can see them from far away. So it makes it harder for them to hunt. The good things about the mane are that if a lion gets into a fight with another male lion and one is swiping and they have these claws, they don't actually reach the skin. They just pull out some of the fur. And so that it gives them a layer of protection if they get into a fight. But the other thing that the mane is useful for is actually to signal to females which males are the strongest and the fittest and can protect the cubs the best. So as a lion is growing, when they get about 2 to 3 years old, the mane starts to grow in. It starts to grow in like this little bit of fuzz, like, you know, when you're a boy and you're 13, 14 years old and you start to get these little white peach fuzz growing. For me, it was when I was about 18 or 19. But when it starts to grow in, it's really, really light. And then it grows thick. And then they get this kind of mohawk with this hair here that grows in, and then it fills in and it gets really, really thick. And they start to grow fur on their elbows and everything. And then when they get just old enough, that mane turns dark. And it gets really dark brown or almost black. And when they get into a fight, the male that loses a lot of the fur in their mane, and then they have to regrow it, and it comes back blonde, and then it takes time for it to get dark again. And what happens is when the females see these males on the landscape and they see, okay, there's a blonde male, and then there's a dark maned male. The dark maned male is probably going to be better at protecting me and my cubs. So it's a signal to the females which ones are going to be dominant and protective and hold the territory to protect their cubs. So there's lots of different things about the mane that are really interesting.
All right, very cool. And then the collars. Another question here on YouTube about the collars. Are they ever damaged by the lions?
Yes, yes, they can be. And one of the things about lions being social is that they like to test and prod and bite and scratch. So, for example, we used to use collars that had an antenna that would stick out of the back. And the first thing that would get removed from that collar would be the antenna. So the lion wakes up, goes back to its pride. All the lions come and they're sniffing, like, what is all this new smell? What is this thing? The cubs start to bite the wire, bite, and then they pull it out. And then it affects the reception of our radio tracking and all of that. But then also, like, the cubs will try to bite and scratch and things like that. But so we make the companies make the collars very, very durable, so that they can handle like the differences in weather when the lions go through rivers and the collars get wet, or when animals bite them, or if like during a moment when they're trying to pull down their prey, they get kicked and the collar might get kicked, but they're still strong enough to handle that impact. So yeah, they don't typically get too damaged.
All right. Well, Andrew, we still have a couple minutes here, so I do want to visit some camera groups and see if there's a last question in a couple of the classrooms to wrap us up today. Give me a big wave at the camera if you want us to come back your way for maybe one final follow-up from a couple classrooms. So here we go. Maine is ready, on deck, lots of arms.
Hi, my name is Sophia, and does which of the lions, the male or the female, hunt?
Hi, Sophia. Good question. I think a lot of people wonder about this. The reputation is that females do all the hunting, and then the males come in and kind of take advantage and just march in there and eat as much as they can. In fact, males do a lot of hunting as well. For reasons that I mentioned before about the mane, and it's really difficult for them to blend in. That can be a challenge for them, but they can bring down big animals like Cape buffalo and giraffe and other things. So they do a fair amount of hunting as well. So both males and females do hunting.
All right. Good question, Maine. Let me see. Oh, Miss Oak is waving.
What problems does that cause?
Do some lions become tame, and what problems does that cause?
Wow. Great question. Great question. So some of the more dangerous animals are the ones that are a little bit habituated, that are kind of used to people, that are used to being around people. Because then if they're comfortable, then they'll move a little bit closer, then circumstances can change, and then all of a sudden they're in a difficult spot. Not only the cats, but the people. So if a lion is afraid of people in a way that's probably better for their survival, if that makes sense. So when you have animals that are, sometimes animals are taken into captivity, even here. Maybe they're injured. Maybe an adult has been killed by farmers, and then these little cubs, and then they're hand fed by people. And oftentimes, if the lions are used to being fed by people, it's very difficult to release them back into the wild, because they see people as a source providing food for them. So if they see people and they're used to being fed by people, then they may approach people looking for food, and then when they don't get it, then maybe they'll try to become more aggressive, trying to get food. So habituating lions can be a really tricky thing. With the tourism industry out here, where vehicles are driving to find lions in national parks and protected areas, it's actually not bad for lions to be used to people. We ourselves, even with our research, will go out and we'll sit with lions. Yesterday, I sat with a pride of lions for 3 hours, and they're pretty shy. But if you do that a few times, then they might get used to the vehicle, and then you can take really good data on how the pride is doing. So there's a line that you don't want to cross. You want them to be used to people in the right areas where conflict isn't really happening. But then you don't want them to get too used to people, because if they do, then, and they're not afraid, then that can lead to other problems. So yeah, it's a really, really tricky thing that you have to really think about when you're working with the cats.
All right. 7th graders, do you have a final one for us? Maybe.
How many lions get tagged a year?
So this year we were able to tag 8 lions. And we even have like 5 more collars that I was hoping to put out. So, but this would be like a really, a year with a lot of collaring. Usually we get about 5 or 6 lions that have working collars, but we try to get close to 10.
All right. New York, final question, if you got one. And then we'll let Andrew get back to some research out there. Are you going out tonight? Into the field?
I may, depending. The last couple of nights we've had lions close to the villages.
Oh, nice.
And we've actually tried to get out there and use loud noisemakers and things to try to scare them away from the village. So 2 nights ago, we were even using firecrackers. We shot up firecrackers, and they exploded, and then the lions ran about 6 miles south of the village. So we were able to get them away from the village so that they didn't cause any problems. But yeah. It's been interesting.
All right, 5th graders, what you got for us?
Why do you think the elephant kept coming to camp?
Okay. Good question. So one of the things is, in the camps where we live and work, there are lots of trees. And the trees have different seeds and fruits and things in them. Now, because most animals are afraid to come into the camp because they're afraid of people, certain times a year, all the trees around the camp no longer have fruit. So for those bold elephants that come into camp, they get a big reward if they're able to come in and move amongst the people, and they're not too afraid. So there are some elephants that came in, and we would have to stay in our tent or stay in our office. Even if you had to go use the bathroom, you had to sit and wait, because it was very dangerous. Elephants can be very, very dangerous. So if they're bold enough to come in, they know that it's a place that they don't really feel comfortable because people are there. So that they'll come in, they'll get those fruits, and then they'll try to get away. And that one elephant, for whatever reason, seemed to be okay with people. We had an understanding, I would say. So when he came in that picture where you could see the tree and then the swing set and everything, he actually came in and he put his forehead against the tree, that big, big tree in the middle of the camp, and he'd push, and then the tree would shake, and all the seeds and all the fruits would fall on the ground, and then he would just pick them up one by one with his trunk and be able to feed. So when he would come in, we could actually walk. We wouldn't walk right up to him, but we could walk around him, around a path, and use the bathroom or go to our tent or do stuff like that. But only with him. And we didn't get too close.
All right, very cool. Well, Andrew, thank you so much. I know it was a bit of a connectivity adventure this morning, so thanks for persisting and making it happen. It was great to connect with you from Botswana today, and from the students' questions, they were definitely right into what you were sharing today.
Yeah, definitely. I always love doing these sessions with you, Joe, because there's always questions that I haven't had before. There's always, and it shows that the students are really thinking and have like really unique insights about what I'm presenting and what it might mean. And so it's always, I love it. I love the questions. I love being able to challenge myself to think about why we do certain things or what it could mean to the environment or to the people or to the lines.
All right. Well, Andrew, we love hosting you. A few classrooms had to duck out for recess, but we still have a few backstage. So I'm going to bring them in for a nice big goodbye and thank you. So here we go. Big goodbye and thank you all the way to Botswana. Thank you so much for being with us today, Andrew. And classrooms, thank you for all your great questions. I sent a link to the Kahoot to your teachers. And happy holidays if we don't see you before Christmas. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.